Let's discuss open hand versus closed hand. I'll give you an example. Here would be kind of an open hand approach. Let's see what song. Okay, and I'm anchoring just a little bit there on the guitar, and we can talk about that, versus a closed hand approach. So the number one thing to consider here is that this is subjective, and this is something that changes over time. I will find myself, even if I'm playing a bluegrass set, a music set, I'll find myself alternating between the two hand patterns depending on speed, depending on what I'm trying to accomplish. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. This is subjective. People change this over time, and you will find great players doing all kinds of different hand positions there, various degrees of anchoring their heel of their hand on the guitar pins. That's one thing that Tony would do. He wouldn't necessarily touch the top of the guitar, but he would grind his end pins down so that he could come in contact with his heel of his hand. I would advise not to do that too much because you're going to kill the tone, but it's okay if that touches there. I do that quite a bit. A lot of people will anchor. Some people anchor quite a stiff anchor, like banjo players do, and that's how I kind of started. It's hard to do now because I've learned that I need a little bit more freedom. And then sometimes I'm just going to do a light brushing across the top. And that's where I find myself a lot of times, although when I'm in a studio environment, I have to get away from that because of that. I'll find that my pinky will tap the top of the guitar. When you're playing live or in a jam, it's not that big a deal, but when every little sound is being recorded, you can't have that in the studio. So I'll go back to a closed hand position solely in the studio, unless it's some slower cross-picking stuff. Okay, so that's the number one thing to talk about, is that it is subjective. This is a journey, going back to what I said earlier. I would say the next thing that we need to consider is that relaxation is key, okay? So when we're playing with a closed hand, why are you playing with a closed hand? We'll talk about that, but what I want to call your attention to is that a lot of times people play with a closed hand because they're trying to force speed. Okay, so actually what's happening, they're not just closing their hand, they're making a fist. And there's a difference between closing your hand to play and making a fist. Because when you make a fist, you're trying to squeeze. And if you're doing that, and especially if you're squeezing more whenever you're trying to play faster or harder, you're just headed for trouble. And you need to back out of that approach, okay? Because that's introducing tension, that's doing things to your forearm, doing things to your elbow, even all the way up into your neck. That's going to cause not only playing problems, but just comfort problems as well, okay? So there's various goals that we're going after whenever we're playing a guitar. We might have single string flat picking like I was doing earlier. We might have cross picking. And then we might have rhythm. And it's okay to vary your hand positions based on what you do there. And I find that for certain things, I enjoy certain hand positions, okay? For example, whenever I'm playing rhythm and it's a slower rhythm, I like to have more of a relax, just let my fingers hang. And whenever I do these various transitions, things like that, I'll let my fingers kind of come down and rest. Very relaxed. I'm trying to be very relaxed. Now, if I step up the tempo, my hands are going to come in a little bit more. Okay. And I once used a very silly analogy there, but I think that there's something to it. If you ever watch figure skaters, I don't know about you, but that's my favorite sport, figure skating. But what they do is whenever they're spinning, and they spin slow, they have their arms out, and then whenever they retract their arms, and to increase those RPMs and increase that centripetal force, then they're able to spin faster, right? Well, the same principle can apply here, right? If we've got a lot hanging out with our pick hand and we're trying to go fast, we're trying to move the same mass, but we're taking up more space, and it just requires more force to move it as fast. Whereas if we reduce the area or the volume, I don't want to get too advanced here and also make myself a fool, but if we bring in that hand, we're dealing with the same mass, the same hand, but now it is compacted and it's just easier to move it faster. So it's something to consider. And that's why I think that I naturally, whenever I go into faster rhythm, that I'm going to bring my hands in. So the question you got to ask is, do you want to transition between positions when you're playing various things, or do you want to attack everything all the same? That's up to you. I would say there's players out there that do both. Great players that use the same position no matter what they're doing. Others that you can definitely see a change in their attack whenever they are changing hand position, whenever they attack a certain kind of playing, all right? So an exercise that we can consider here to help us kind of figure that out and get better at it is to go between the three big categories of playing that I consider. I've mentioned them before, but more of a single string flat picking, a cross picking, so that can be done with 3 strings or 2, or it can be more of a rhythm thing. Or it can be, the third category would be rhythm. Okay. So often in our guitar playing, we're going to be weaving in between those 3 big buckets of approaches, types of picking, maybe even in the same song. So a good exercise would be for you to try maybe an open position and go back and forth between all of those things. So you can try a little fiddle tune. Right into some cross picking, and then right into some rhythm, and just go back and forth, cross picking with some strings. You can try a little bit of anchor if you want, which I find that cross picking it really helps me know where I am if I'm doing a little bit of an anchor. Into some flat picking. Maybe try the whole thing with the closed hand, right? Back and forth. Okay. And then you can try going from hand opened, closed, a little bit of an anchor, based on what kind of playing that you're doing. But you may say, well, just tell me what to do. Tell me if I'm supposed to do open or close. Tell me if I'm supposed to anchor or if I'm not, based on what kind of music I'm playing. And I'm telling you that I can't. We started with that. This is subjective. So my job as a teacher is to give you the various options and to encourage you to explore and find out what you do best while keeping an open mind that there may be changes to be made in your future. Okay? And if you just press on into the journey like that, seeking to get rid of tension, seeking to get rid of any extra work that you're doing, seeking to move toward a medium heavy to a heavy pick, seeking to learn how to hold the pick to where it doesn't fall out of your hands, but not gripping it too hard, seeking to get that good tone, right? And the pick responding the way that you want. As long as you're seeking all those things, you're going to be just fine as you explore there. The universal absolutes, right? The objective absolutes are that we do want to hold the pick with our first 2 fingers, that we want to naturally make our pick grip. We don't want to do something that's unnatural. We want to act like we're just grabbing a card. And the other just objective absolute is not to introduce any extra stress or work into our playing. And finally, to take advantage of that Z-axis with the use of rotation. okay? So if you're watching here on the site, leave your comment below in the comment thread. Maybe post a video of you playing a close-up of your pick hand so that we can take a look at it and offer you some constructive criticism. Or if there's something that you want to debate in what I've taught, please. This is an open debate on a lot of these things, because I mentioned at the very top, this is my opinion. These are things that I've discovered. A lot of it is subjective, but again, my goal is to lead you through kind of the field of subjectivity to find what's best for you when it comes to your pick hand.